We're talking about real life stories and how they've been successfully handled. So Roger, you have an example for us, don't you?
Yeah, thanks Hannah. So this is one that is particularly relevant to functional medicine practitioners, particularly those wanting to start new into this field, to migrate from what they're doing in the NHS, say, and start a new business. So one way of attracting a patient list is to divert your NHS list into your new private functional medicine business, which is forbidden in terms of the NHS requirements, rules. There's also the ethics of it, so it's not something to be encouraged. And I had a particular patient that generally had a misunderstanding over that. There was some alternative treatment that would have been in the patient's best interest. Long story short, there was a complaint to NHS England over what was a misunderstanding about what the patient thought was a diversionary tactic into this doctor's new functional medicine practice. So the interesting thing about the NHS complaints procedure and the NHS England complaints procedure in particular is it's quite an interesting forum in terms of learning self-reflection. It's not primarily a disciplinary forum, whereas the GMC is very much a creature of statute, has a disciplinary focus, is there to ensure patient safety. This wasn't really so much a patient safety situation, but it does produce some fairly destructive allegations against the doctor, because the subtext of the NHS investigation is that you were seeking to divert a patient away from treatment that would be free at the point of delivery for your own pecuniary gain.
I see.
So, that's quite a destructive allegation to have made if you're a doctor, as you can understand. So our primary focus is to understand the issues and to assess the risks, but also to recognise that there's a human being in this process. As I was saying to you previously, one of the definitions of failure of a regulatory structure is that physicians, doctors leave the profession because of the way they're treated. So we're very conscious that if this is hanging over a doctor, if there's any issues that are likely to stick, as it were, then you address those and you move into mitigation mode. If there aren't, you do everything you can to exit that client at the earliest stage, because there's nothing more corrosive than having this procedure or the threat of the consequences of the procedure hanging over them for months at a time. So this particular case, we were able to draft, and I went out to see the doctor. I do that with all our people, and we have a back and forth, and we actually effectively form a little defence within the framework of the NHS England procedure. That went back, and highly unusually, after 5 weeks, a note came back to say that that was sufficient and that the case was closed and would go no further, which is an optimal result. For her, she felt supported. Yes, there were some issues about some relearning and understanding some of the interaction that had gone on. And that's one of the things I would say, all of our clients in our, you see them in bad circumstances, so you're likely to see the worst of them. But, they don't shout and scream and break the crockery. They're very analytical, and if there were learning points to be had, as in this case, they were taken on board, dealt with, evidenced, and the NHS procedure was fulfilled.
I think this is a real example of what we do. Because I think it's fair to say, Roger, that the sort of standard operating procedure with insurance would be the lady would have had the complaint, she would have phoned up her insurer, her insurer would have appointed solicitors, it would have been straight away adversarial, there would have been a sort of battle with NHS England through the solicitors, she probably would have had some kind of issue landed on her complaint, the insurer would have paid for sure, but that puts a premium up, it would have gone on probably for years with a lot of stress. So we're very much about getting in with our customers, our clients, right at an early stage, helping them sort the issue out quickly and effectively and moving on.
Yeah, and that is so important because, as you say, it could be so destructive for someone's career, couldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, so the other thing that we do, and so this is switching to the GMC as opposed to NHS England, is if you're familiar with the NHS, with the GMC correspondence, they produce things in a certain time. And the initial notification of a complaint that's abridged, so one doesn't know one's accuser, which is an interesting thing in itself, but that's how they work. And they don't actually call for a detailed response at that stage, but we're very much of the school that we give all the information and we give an explanation and we explain the position, even if it's not called for, right at the first opportunity. The objective is to exit our client from the process as soon as possible. And that's achieved through an internal procedure of reviews within the GMC before it goes to anywhere near a formal committee. So we give the earliest opportunity for the GMC to assess the situation and to be satisfied on patient safety. So the accent there is patient safety. With NHS England, yes, patient safety, but it's also learning and various other aspects of the doctor as a professional. With the GMC, it's all about patient safety and the consequences of any risk associated with that. So one of my sort of favourite rounding off phrases in our presentation is that in our submission, for this and this reason, patient safety was not at risk, either at that incident or more broadly. And that generally gets to an early closure. As I say, for all the reasons we speak about, there's nothing positive for these people being trapped in these systems for months, if not years. Never mind the prospect of having to face what then becomes a publicly reported process if you end up at the committee stage.
That's incredibly stressful, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. Well, Chris and I say we can't think, with the possible exception of civil aviation, that there's actually a more regulated profession that one can go into.
That's really interesting.
You know, you've got the GMC or the General Dental Council, you've got Royal Colleges, you've got NHS England as a broader regulator.
Well, thank God they've got your support. Okay? Well, thank you for sharing that. It's really interesting to hear those real life stories and how you've made a positive difference. And for more information and to find out how Owlicity can help you, feel free to visit our website.